We always like to say about you, Steve, don't mince words. Tell us how you really feel. But in other words, you've seen in the 20 years, and I know you've been practicing longer than that, you've actually seen, and maybe this has something to do with Don Spry talking about civility, where attorneys may not be enjoying the practice as much as they used to. Maybe they didn't get involved in practicing law, first and foremost, to be an advocate. Maybe it was something else, dollar signs, perhaps?
Yeah, I think dollar signs have a lot to do with it. Things have changed, yes, in 20 years, but what hasn't changed is my view that for lawyers, they need to practice law in a way where they really like what they're doing. And if they don't like what they're doing, then they shouldn't be practicing.
Steve was ambitious right out of the gate. The cases he took on weren't the blockbusters he would someday win national renown for, but they were often challenging and represented novel issues that he had a penchant for addressing. He took cases concerning consumer fraud, personal injury, and election law. He represented both individuals and unions, often facing off against the ingrained bureaucracy. In those years, he also undertook numerous civil rights cases with the ACLU, matters where his passion for individual rights was always on display. His political career never quite took off. Early on, he made a run for city council under the Consumer Party, but soon returned to his love of being a litigator.
Because the drug company shouldn't have been out there selling the doctor on it, and the doctor maybe should have reconsidered prescribing it and think twice about accepting his lunch and a trip to Florida or wherever.
My malpractice rates are higher than in Delaware, higher than in Wisconsin, higher than in California.
That's because the insurance companies are taking advantage of you.
because the legal system is different here.
It's time you focused on the insurance industry.
There is, look, I think
Stop talking about games.
You know, Steve makes, I think, you know, in this debate, everybody's a little right and everybody's a little wrong.
Are they handing out money to these doctors? Because that's what you make it sound like.
No, they don't hand it out.
Or are they doing clinical studies? Are they giving out money for grants?
The doctors, look, I've seen the documents. I've done the depositions. Okay. I've been in the litigation. I know exactly what they do.
What do they do?
And what they do is they call them rabbits. If you're a heavy prescriber, you are a rabbit, and you get lots of money.
How do you?
They are buying science, funding studies that have no merit whatsoever, and misleading the public, and causing women to continue to think implants may be safe when they aren't. John, why in the rest of the world? What is it in the United States that enables
It's not true that it's in the rest of the world.
It's almost the entire rest of the world.
Oh,
Europe, they're banned in. Even
not.
Brazil, they're banned in now. Now, the question I have for you is, why are you insisting and persisting in this when you can't even use it in Europe? These labelings, because you are engaged in a misrepresentation. They can't.
If you actually had a chance, if you actually had a chance to see how cases are tried.
Tell you what, anytime. The FDA never gets around to concluding there's fraud. It happens so seldom, you can almost never get them to act. So what happens is the consumer's stuck with going into court and having to prove fraud on the FDA, and the judge says, you can't do that in our courtroom, you got to go to the FDA, which is, as Senator Specter said, and I completely agree, a joke.
So I want to ask,
control the FDA, and that's why all these problems we've had with the drugs is going on. You've got the foxes in the chicken coop, and you don't have one fox, you got a bunch of them.
It's a great jury speech because it allows you not to talk about the science.
The sample ballot that we saw that is out there had the names all in order, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, not on two sides. There was no butterfly ballot posted, and there were no punch holes posted in the sample ballot that was posted to notify the public of the ballot.
What about that, Congressman? It doesn't sound like from what he says that there really was notice.
Ahead of time. Right. People went in and walked in and punched it in various election offices ahead of the election in absentee balloting. Of course they saw it ahead of time. It was also published in the paper.
But wait a second, Congressman.
But who saw it
apparently it wasn't, Congressman. Congressman, there are two issues. I think what Steve, and let's get this corrected, Steve says is that the ballot that was published in the newspaper was different from what was shown at the polling booth.
Absolutely.
I was down there all week, last week, and my law firm has 12 lawyers down there now counting those ballots.
The best way to count votes is by a manual count. Everybody knows that except the Republicans. These chits and all this kind of junk, that's a bunch of garbage. Secondly, if they really wanted to do it right, they would do a statistical analysis. It's been done by the top people in the United States. Stick to that. Then you have an honest vote. I tell you with absolute certainty, Vice President Gore won the election in Florida by several thousand votes if they allowed the statistical analysis or a revote. And if they don't want to do that, then Governor Bush is going to be sanctified as the President of the United States, having lost Florida if the votes were truly counted, and having lost the popular vote in the United States. And that is wrong.
Another big drug company. Another historic settlement.
By pushing Seroquel for unapproved purposes, AstraZeneca made patients into guinea pigs in an unsupervised drug test.
And for the third time in little over a year, the national Scheller law firm, headquartered in Philadelphia, has represented a leading whistleblower in a massive pharmaceutical fraud settlement.
So how did a boy end up taking a drug that made him grow breasts?
The New York Times has written up the whole story about millions. We're talking about large sums of money, and it's the psychiatry drugs that actually are turning out to be the #1 problem, causing diabetes, pancreatitis, boys to grow breasts. Did you know that?
When John was just 7, he began taking Risperdal for ADD. Even though the FDA approved the drug only for adult patients who are psychotic, John's doctor and others widely prescribed it to kids for less severe behavior problems. John and most of the other children weren't psychotic at all, but were given Risperdal for behavior disorders, including autism and ADD.
It's about as bad a thing as a boy can get that I can imagine.
Attorney Stephen Scheller is suing Janssen, which makes Risperdal. He claims Janssen marketed Risperdal for unapproved uses in children, downplayed serious risks like diabetes and seizures, and breast growth wasn't even mentioned under warnings, but was buried under precautions in obscure terms. Scheller represents John and 9 other boys, including this one who was only 4 when he developed a breast on one side and began producing milk.
This child has had mastectomies.
The treatment for the unbridled breast growth is as unthinkable as the disorder.
From our firm's standpoint, this is the kind of work that lawyers should be doing. Now what I want to do, if it continues, I want to see to it that the CEO of these major companies, if they do it again, this time, they will be behind bars.
Your side won billions of dollars against Johnson & Johnson, but you never got the CEO, Alex Gorski. Some people said, look, you won the war, you lost the battle, go home.
Well, you know, it's kind of sad that that is true. We left the bad guys in charge. Alex Gorski is now the CEO of Johnson & Johnson. And that is particularly disturbing to me because what should have happened, he was directly involved in the misconduct of the illegal marketing and misrepresentation about Risperdal to both the public, to the doctor community, and later involved in what I view as the cover-up. And where that future goes is very unclear. But I think one thing is clear, that lawyers need to focus on doing what they consider to be in the best interests of not just the client, but in terms of what's in the best interest of preserving our country and our Constitution and the rights that we are so dedicated to for these over 200 years. And I think if we do that, things will shake out in the end. The lawyers will be successful. They may change the ways they do things. They may take less money and by the hour. They may handle different kinds of cases. But that is so critical, to do something that you love to do and to do it correctly, focus, and make sure it's the right thing that you're doing.